I would like to thank you for coming. My name is Daniel Yang, and I'm a second-year full-time MBA student here at UCLA Anderson. I'm also the Executive Vice President of the Greater China Business Association. As your student organizer for today's conference, it's with great pleasure and a real honor for me to open up the conference for you guys. We are delighted to have all of you here joining us this afternoon. I hope that you'll enjoy this conference. I hope that you get a chance to interact with the business leaders that we have brought together today and hear their thoughts and their insights on the growth industries, the emerging sectors, and the successful strategies for working in the U.S.-China relationship. Here, I would like to extend a special thank you to all of the speakers, the moderators, and acknowledge the past student directors who come back and join us today for this important milestone. I would encourage you to download the Woo Conference app. Yes, we have an app for the conference, and where you'll be able to find some more details about the conference. I would like to recognize our partner and platinum sponsors, PwC, Cathay Bank, and Leighton Watkins for their support and commitment. And also the conference organizers, UCLA Anderson's Greater China Business Association, the UCLA Chinese Students and Scholars Association, and also the wonderful folks at the UCLA Anderson Center for Global Management, led by Lucy Lar. We're also grateful for the support for China Enterprise Council, the UCLA Asia Institute, Center for Chinese Studies, and UCLA Anderson's Global Executive MBA Program for Asia Pacific Program. And of course, I would like to express our gratitude to the Woo family. Their generosity enabled us to present this annual conference here today. They're represented here by Michael Woo, who is the son of Wilbur K. Woo, who sadly passed away in November 2012. Wilbur Woo and his wife Beth endowed the Wilbur K. Woo Greater China Business Conference at UCLA Anderson to show their gratitude for the training that Wilbur received here at his alma mater many, many years ago. I would like also to thank Dean Judy Olian. Since her appointment in 2006, Dean Olian has introduced an amazing array of programs, developed close partnerships in Asia, particularly in the Greater China region, and established the Center for Global Management here at Anderson. She has truly strengthened and advanced UCLA Anderson into one of the leading business schools in the world with a truly global focus. Now, please join me in thanking and welcoming Dean Julian of UCLA Anderson.
Thank you, Daniel. The student groups that Daniel mentioned, you've done a fantastic job. We're so proud of you. And we thank you for engineering and choreographing this magnificent conference. And to the Center for Global Management that stands behind all of this, thank you. Welcome to everyone for this 10th annual conference. I see some alumni friends, some faculty, and of course, many students and interested parties in everything going on in U.S.-Sino relationships. So over the 10 years, the topics that we're focused on in this splendid conference have varied depending on the issues of the day. When the conference began, the topic of the day was U.S. investment in China. Then we looked at cross-border investment between the two countries. And today, of course, the focus is mainly on China inbound investments into the United States, as well as a focus on China's current economic circumstances and how they spill over into the economies of the rest of the world, including, of course, ours, and particularly ours in California. The strength of the economic relationship and ties between the United States and China have never been greater. China is now U.S.'s largest trading partner in combined imports and exports, larger now than Canada, which is quite a milestone. Now, in terms of current day issues, China's economy continues to slow. Earlier this week, Fortune noted that China's economy expanded only 1.1% in the first quarter of 2016. There's also a tremendous surge in borrowing promoting some observers like George Soros to fret that China's economy resembles the US in 2007 and 8, just before the bust here. And China's manufacturing infrastructure is undergoing massive transformation with the country's evolution to lean manufacturing and robotization. When you think about that scale of tectonic shift, it'll totally transform cost structures in the production sector, the educational reforms that will be badly needed when people are displaced by machines, and it'll totally dislocate the earning power of large segments of the population. How this translates into social changes is also adding to the uncertainty of forecasts about China. Now, not everyone agrees with the current nervousness about China. Ma Jun, who's the chief economist of China's central bank's research bureau, suggests that recent government stabilizing efforts have resulted in positive trends in trade, inflation, output, and credit data. Of course, any change emanating from China is a lot bigger than that proverbial butterfly effect. Whatever happens in China very quickly and significantly impacts the rest of the world, including California. In Los Angeles, our own UCLA Anderson forecast economist Wilbur Woo suggests that China's turmoil might reduce the growth of LA's trade and tourism, but Chinese investment in LA real estate should continue. After all, investing outside China is still seen by many Chinese who can afford it as the best hedge against the uncertainty of investing in China at this time. So these are just a few of the uncertainties in China-US relationships. Making sense of them is what we're all here for today at the Woo conference, and I hope you'll find some answers. Beyond thanking our students and, of course, our platinum sponsors, PwC, Cathay Bank, and Latham Watkins, I also want to acknowledge here today Mr. Pin Tai, who is the president and director of Cathay Bank, and we look forward to hearing from him shortly. And, of course, this conference is celebrating the legacy of Wilbur Woo, who, along with his wife Beth, generously endowed this event to promote understanding and economic ties between Greater China and the U.S. Mr. Woo was executive vice president of Cathay Bank, the first Chinese American-owned bank. Mr. Woo also served as chairman of the Chinese Times, which is the oldest Chinese language newspaper in the U.S. He was grand president of the Chinese American Citizens Alliance, which lobbied for the historic immigration reform bill of the mid-1960s that opened the doors to a new wave of immigrants from China and Taiwan. And today, of course, with the immigration crisis being what it is, that role is especially noteworthy. Wilbur Woo received the UCLA Neil Jacoby Award in 1996 for contributions to international relations. As Daniel mentioned, Michael Woo is here with us today, and let me introduce him. Michael is Dean of the College of Environmental Design at Cal Poly Pomona. He served on the Los Angeles City Council for 8 years as a longtime member of the Los Angeles Planning Commission, in addition to his role on the City Council. He chairs the Board of Directors of Sustainable Economic Enterprises of LA. Like his father, he's a graduate of the UCs. He earned his BA at UC Santa Cruz and a Master of City Planning at UC Berkeley. We're particularly grateful to Michael and to his family for endowing this important conference and for their continued guidance and incredible engagement in this wonderful endeavor. Please welcome Michael.
Thank you very much, Dean Olian. It's a great pleasure to be here on behalf of my mother and my sisters and everyone in our family to see how the Wilbur K. Woo Greater China Business Conference has grown over 10 years. My real duty here is to introduce our special guest, Mr. Pin Tai, the President and Director of Cathay Bank. But before I do that, I have a special message for Dean Olian. Dean Olian, since you are the powerful dean of the Anderson School of Management, I wanted to tell you about a problem I just discovered down in Lot 4 outside. For some reason, there are many drivers who park SUVs in compact spaces in Lot 4. I'm sure that none of them are Anderson School students. But could you please use your powers as a dean to control this unpleasant behavior on the part of SUV drivers? I appreciate it. I know from my own experience, deans have many powers, sometimes extending to parking. So thank you, Dean Olian. And I want to give special thanks to Dean Olian for her support and her nurturing of this conference. Also to Senior Associate Dean Al Osborne, who about 10 years ago suggested to my father that letting MBA students in the Anderson School run the conference was a good idea. About 10 years ago, my dad was not so sure this was a good idea, but obviously the success of the conference and the thrilling stories about Anderson School students making contacts, getting jobs, getting great experiences out of running this conference has proved the value of this concept. And of course, I also want to thank Lucy Allard, who is able to respond instantly to every single request I ever make. And so thank you to Lucy, and thank you to the students in the Greater China Business Conference for the association for all the work that you do to make this conference a success. I bring you greetings, first of all, from my mother, Beth Woo, who recently celebrated her 100th birthday. It's quite remarkable. She's not able to be here today, but it's one example of how in our family we do value longevity. And the fact that the Woo Conference has managed to not just survive, but actually grow and become stronger and stronger over 10 years is something that not only our family respects, but I think that the reputation of this conference and the reputation of the Anderson School for supporting the conference is something that is definitely of great value. I wanted to mention that just last Sunday, I gave a lecture in Chinatown at a conference, actually a walking tour organized by the LA Conservancy, in which I talked about the history of Chinatown from 1970 to the present. And I had to also tell the story about my own father, who came here as an immigrant from China, born and raised in a small village about an hour-and-a-half drive away from Guangzhou. He and I and members of our family were able to go back after about 65 years or so to go back and see the building that he was born and raised in without electricity, without water, even today without electricity and without water. But to get a sense of where he came from. He attended college at the old Lingnan College in Guangzhou before having the wisdom to transfer here to UCLA. But he had a lot of stories about what it was like to live in Los Angeles in those days. As some of you may know, it wasn't legal for Chinese to buy real estate in certain neighborhoods of Los Angeles because of restrictive covenants. My dad rented an apartment near downtown LA and took the bus out to Westwood Village, which at that time was a real village. There wasn't very much of Los Angeles west of Fairfax Avenue. And then my dad spent decades working in the family business. And this is before Cathay Bank. People identify my dad as a banker, but they may not be aware of the fact for decades, he and my grandfather and my mother ran a wholesale produce business in LA. And it was only after several decades of success running that business that he discovered banking or banking discovered him. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but he was fortunate to become one of the founders of Cathay Bank back in 1962 when the bank started in a small storefront on North Broadway in Chinatown. So this is all to say that over the course of my dad's life, he was not only fortunate, but very happy that he was able to become a financially wealthy person enough to be able to support his alma mater. That is, he remembered that even though, of course, he was able to have great accomplishments throughout his life, but he was always grateful to UCLA because to him, UCLA represented opportunity. And so when the time came, thanks to Professor James Tong, who's somewhere in the room here, I think, Professor James Tong from the Department of Political Science and Perry Wong from the Milken Institute came and suggested to my dad that it's about time that UCLA had a conference about the relationship between China and the United States. It started out fairly small, but as you can see with your presence here, it's been a great success. And so the Woo family, including my mother, we're all very proud to see how UCLA has nurtured and cultivated this concept. Before I introduce Mr. Tai, just one more comment about the relationship between China and the United States. There is, of course, quite a bit of media coverage these days about how the economy in China seems to be slowing down, and coverage about the implications of this for the US economy and the world economy. But I just wanted to mention a story from yesterday as an example of how the relationship between China and the US has many different facets. Yesterday afternoon, before I came out to the pre-conference dinner here in this building, I was in Orange County at a reception with some landscape architects. I was talking to the principal in a Orange County landscape architecture firm who said that, like many other landscape architecture and planning firms in the US, they survived the recession by getting a lot of business and clients in China and in other countries. And that was great for several years, but in the last few years, the level of their work in China has been going down. That is, fewer clients, fewer projects. So I asked this principal in a landscape architecture firm, is this because the Chinese economy is slowing down, or is it because the Chinese clients are now hiring Chinese landscape architects, not from Orange County? And he turned around and said it was a little of both, but he said on the positive side, many of his former clients in China are now coming to the US, starting projects and hiring his firm to do work here in the US. So this is just a small anecdote, but an example of how the complicated and large relationship between China and the US has many facets, which is why conferences like this are extremely timely, extremely important for UCLA and the Anderson School to present, and why it's extremely important for you to be here to be part of it. Now, I'd like to introduce our special guest. Mr. Pin Tai is president and director of Cathay Bank. You could say that Mr. Tai is a New Yorker, in that before coming to Cathay Bank, he was very involved in banking in New York. He has over 33 years of commercial banking experience in America, Hong Kong, and China. He worked for Bank of China, USA, in charge of credit and business development, correspondent banking, and marketing. Before that, he was employed by Bank of America in Hong Kong and China. Now, he's here at Cathay Bank as president and director. As you know, Cathay Bank was founded in 1962. It has 58 branches in California, New York, Massachusetts, Texas, Washington State, Illinois, Nevada, New Jersey, Maryland, and Hong Kong, as well as representative offices in Shanghai and Taipei. So, students from the Anderson School, as you see, Cathay Bank represents many opportunities for you. And I hope you'll have a chance to talk to Mr. Tai or to some of the other representatives of Cathay Bank who are here. Please join me in welcoming President and Director of Cathay Bank, Mr. Pin Tai.
Thank you, Michael, for the nice introduction. And I'm thrilled to be here representing Cathay Bank. We are very proud to be the platinum sponsor for Wilbur Woo's Greater China Conference. This is celebrating 10th year, and we see a lot of progress in the event. And we are honored to be part of this program because of a close long-term association with Mr. Wilbur Woo, as Michael and Dean Olian mentioned before. Cathay Bank and Mr. Woo has a very humble beginning. And our bank was founded in 1962 with $550,000 in capital and in a 1,000 square feet storefront in LA Chinatown. And at that time, there were about 20,000 Chinese in LA. And LA Chinatown was a poor community. And they had difficulty in obtaining financial support from the American banks. And because of that, there's a group of business leaders that get together and founded Cathay Bank in 1962 with a mission to support the Chinese American and to prosper in their community. Wilbur joined Cathay Bank with the same mission as Cathay Bank, is to serve our community and make sure that Chinese American can have a better life in the United States. After 54 years, Cathay Bank has become a publicly traded bank and listed in NASDAQ in 1990. And the bank right now has $13 billion in total asset. As Michael mentioned, we have 58 branches in 9 states, all across the United States. And our mission of providing financial support to the Chinese community will remain the same as when we started the bank in 1962. And this year, we are very proud that Cathay Bank was rated by Forbes magazine as number 12 in the top 100 publicly traded bank in the United States. I have participated in the past conference here as panel speaker, but I could not attend the last year's due to a business trip. And I heard from my colleagues that it was a great conference, over 500 participants. And when I look at the program for today's conference, it is jam-packed with keynote speaker, plenary sessions, and many panel discussions with very interesting topics and outstanding speakers. And this year, I heard that the participant has exceeded 600. And thank you, Dean Olian, and the student and faculty from UCLA, and also my colleagues from Cathay Bank, and other sponsors, especially PwC and Nathan Watkins, who have put a lot of time and effort to organize this conference. And I am privileged to know Wilbur in 1999 when I first joined Cathay Bank. At that time, he was a director of Cathay Bank, and he later became the vice chairman of our board. He was a great banker and business advocate and visionary. If you read his biography in the conference material, you'll be very impressed with his accomplishments. And Mr. Woo is a great role model for me and for Chinese American in the United States. He graduated from UCLA, became a banker. He helped many Chinese Americans to fulfill their financial dream. And on the way, he made some money to take care of his family and also gave back to community. He was well respected by many people. What a great life. As we all know, China and the United States are the two superpowers in the world. It is very important to all of us that the two countries maintain a good relationship and collaborate with each other to create a win-win situation for economic growth and prosperity. From a recent survey reported by Committee of 100, there are over 60% of Americans believe that China is an important partner for America. And close to 60% of Americans have a positive feeling of China. However, 75% of Americans still think that China is a threat to Americans, both economically and militarily. And last year, Chinese companies invested $15 billion in the United States, and it is estimated that total investment from China this year will exceed $30 billion, double that of last year. And I want to share with you my first-hand experience with China. I was the first generation of American bankers sent to China when China just opened its door to foreign investment back in 1980. At that time, when I arrived in China, all I see the colors of the clothing are green, blue, and gray. And when traveling between China cities, I had to board the Russian Illusion passenger jets. And after the jets hit the sky, the whole cabin is filled of cloud and cigarette smoke. So what a horrible experience. So I resort to taking a road trip instead of flying the plane. Okay, so I took a road trip from Fuzhou, Fujian, down to Xiamen. It took about 7 to 8 hours that time. Right now it's about 2.5 hours with the highway. Okay, so I took a lunch break and stopped at a local restaurant. And when I was served the rice, I see there are many, many rice worms in the rice. So I complained to the waiter, and the waiter looked at me with a weird expression. I think he is thinking, don't you know, this is high protein rice. What the heck? As you can see that at that time, China is a very poor country and needs a lot of help from foreign investment, technology, and human capital transfer. And China was smart enough to open its door to all of that. Now, after 35 years, when you visit China, you'll notice that the ladies in major cities like Beijing and Shanghai, they are better dressed than the ladies here. The infrastructure, such as highway, high-speed rail, airport, and train station, are so much advanced, and in many cases, even better than in America. There are more multimillionaires in Beijing now than in New York City. What a big change. And that happened because China is willing to be humble and seek help and learn from other advanced countries over the last few decades. It is amazing now that the tide has turned, and Chinese companies are investing in real estate development, building manufacturing facility in America. Just in LA downtown, there are many new projects that are being developed by Chinese developers, such as Greenland and Oceanwide. It is very important that Americans and Chinese to engage in more communication and sharing of ideas and work together for the peace and prosperity of both countries. I believe that the Wilbur Woo Greater China Conference will be a great venue to foster that communications. And I hope that you enjoy the program and learn something new and useful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dean Wu and Mr. Tai. And it's now my pleasure to introduce our first keynote speaker, Chairwoman Fiona Ma. Fiona is chairwoman of the California State Board of Equalization. Now I'm just going to ask the students here to please just volunteer. What is the California State Board of Equalization? Okay, there's a branding opportunity here, I believe. Well, anytime you buy anything, Chairwoman Ma collects the state sales tax. So they collect basically everything other than income taxes pretty much goes to the State Board of Equalization. And Chairwoman Ma, Fiona, is the chairwoman of that. How much money do you collect annually? 60 billion. So the more you buy, the more she gets. Chairwoman Ma, Fiona, is serving as her first term as member of the State Board, representing 23 counties and 9 million Californians of the 2nd District. The 2nd District, by the way, is a big and important one. It includes Alameda, San Francisco, Contra Costa, San Mateo, and Santa Barbara counties. Prior to that, Fiona represented the 12th Assembly District from December 2006 to 2012, and she served as the first Asian American woman Assembly Speaker pro tem in California history. So she's had a phenomenal history of 20 years in politics. Throughout her service as an elected official, Chairwoman Ma has been an outspoken advocate for women, championing proposals to curb human trafficking and to provide support and resources for victims of domestic violence. She earned her bachelor's degree from the Rochester Institute of Technology, her master's in taxation. She's very well equipped to do this. From Golden State University, she's a CPA, and then she has an MBA from Pepperdine. An interesting factoid, she's a member of SAG, the union representing theater, film, television, radio actors. Having appeared in a number of films during her San Francisco time, she was appointed, because of that, I think, to serve on the California Film Commission in 2016. She also serves as treasurer of California Women Lead, a nonpartisan organization that offers women the training and support they need to become successful in the political arena. And I think everyone will agree that we need even more qualified people to run for higher office in this country. So please welcome Chairwoman Fiona Ma.
Thank you very much, Dean Olian, for your words and your leadership here. I want to thank Alan Chu of PwC for inviting me to speak here today, Mr. Pin Tai for your leadership at a very, very important and prominent bank, and Mike Woo. For those of you who don't know, Mike Woo served on the Los Angeles City Council in 1985, and he was the first Asian American ever to serve on the Los Angeles City Council. So thank you for breaking barriers. I'm just going to take a couple minutes to talk about public service. I never thought I would be standing here on this stage today. My parents were both born in China. My father was born in Kunming, and my mother was born in the Canton province, close to Hong Kong. They both left in the 1949 time period, immigrated to Hong Kong, met in Canada, and then moved to New York, where I was born. So I am an ABC. Back then, my parents never thought China would be where it is today. So growing up, they said, we're in America, you're going to speak English. And, you know, they did try to send us to Chinese school on the weekends with the handful of other Chinese kids that were in my town, but we weren't very good students and always had a hard time keeping a teacher to come and teach us. So growing up, you know, my parents wanted us to be a lawyer, an engineer, accountant, or a doctor, one of the lead professions. I was good at math, like many of you probably, and so I became an accountant. So that's why I went to school for accounting and got my CPA license, my master's in taxation. But then in 1995, I saw the glass ceiling. I left to start my own practice and became the president of a small business association, the Asian Business Association. So that was the first time I ever got involved in politics. All of a sudden, I had to go and lobby the San Francisco Board of Supervisors and the mayor. I went to Sacramento to testify on bills, got involved in the 1995 White House Conference on Small Business under President Bill Clinton. And I thought to myself, you know, public service, how great to be able to go and help people every day. So I came home and, you know, said to my parents, I definitely, you know, Mom and Dad, you know, I appreciate your sacrifice, but I think I want to, you know, go into public service, run for office. Well, my parents being both born in China, you know, did not encourage me to go into the government, as we know. You stay outside or under the radar of government. We do not get involved. And so my parents said, please don't do that. You know, you're an accountant, CPA, honorable profession, you know, politics is not. But I eventually, you know, persevered, and after about 8 years, my parents threw up their hands and they said, okay, if you want to go waste your life, go ahead. They moved to Las Vegas, and I was able to run for office. That was 2002. So I ran for the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, and I was the only one, I was elected out of 11 members and served in the Chinese district. It's called the Sunset District in San Francisco, and where most of the Chinese live, and I got elected there. In the meantime, China was expanding. The Jiangsu province was inviting members to come back, and I found out that California and the Jiangsu province had established a sister state relationship back in 1985, but nobody had really done anything to further those relations. So I started taking delegations of elected officials back to China, initially to the Jiangsu province. And back then, in the early 2000s, China was not very open, right? It was not easy to travel. You needed translators. You need to make sure you had people who were organizing it on the China side. You needed, obviously, Chinese Mandarin speakers. And I did it that first year. My parents said, what are you doing? Why are you going to China? And I said, well, I don't know. I mean, they invited us. I want to kind of see where we came from. And after so many years now, I now know why I was doing all of that, right? Like all of you here, we have been opening those doors. We have building communication. Fact that President Obama, after he got elected, shortly after he got elected, said, I want to try to get 100,000 kids, U.S. kids, to go and study in China, right? I mean, this is where we are here today. And I really have a lot of hope in all of the young people, many of you from China coming to study here, because you are the bridge builders. You are the next generation who are going to be the collaborators, the communicators, and I believe the peacemakers. China and the US, number one, number two economies, we need to really get along, and we need to foster those relationships. And I want to thank everyone here for participating in this conference, for sharing your ideas, for promoting better collaboration, communication, and peace around the world. So thank you very much for having me, and I hope you have a great conference today.